In this section, we're going to look at the Latinos' fight for rights. And the main idea is that in the 1960s, Latinos struggled to achieve social justice. Our learning objectives are to analyze the fight of Latinos for social justice. So looking at Latinos in the early 1960s, more than 900,000 Latinos lived in the United States in 1960. A Latino is any person of Latin American descent. 1/3 of Mexican American families live below the poverty line. And twice as many Mexican Americans as white Americans were unemployed. Latinos faced discrimination in education. Schools had less qualified teachers, fewer resources, and shabbier facilities. Few teachers were able to speak Spanish. In politics, Latinos had far less power. In politics, Latinos had far less power than the size of their population warranted. Electoral district boundaries kept Latino votes scattered. The number of Latinos in political office was very small, and Latinos were often excluded from serving on juries. Latinos sought social justice, which is the fair distribution of advantages and disadvantages in society. Some examples included the Delano grape strike, where migrant agricultural workers, many of whom were Latino, received low wages for backbreaking labor. In 1965, Filipino farm workers went on strike in Delano, California. The National Farm Workers Association soon joined them. One major leader was Cesar Chavez. He co-founded the National Farm Workers Association, a union of Mexican American farm workers. His leadership inspired many Mexican Americans to fight discrimination in their lives. And now let's take a closer look at the Delano grape strike. So once again, in 1965, Filipino farm workers went on strike and demanded a 15-cent increase in their hourly wage. Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez agreed to help. Some 5,000 grape workers walked off their jobs. The Delano grape strike lasted for 5 years. Strikers picketed the fields. Chavez led a 250-mile march to the state capitol, and Huerta sent union activists around the nation to set up local boycott committees. Union activists and sympathetic volunteers stood in front of grocery stores nationwide, urging Americans not to buy grapes. The growers finally gave in and finally settled with the union. The success of the strike made Cesar Chavez a national figure. The Chicano movement. This Chicano was a shortened version of Mexicanos. They wanted to convey ethnic pride and commitment to political activism. Reyes Lopez Tiarina was an early Chicano leader who formed Alianza Federal de Mercedes, or the Federal Alliance of Land Grants. Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez was another leading figure in the Chicano movement, and he founded the Crusade for Justice. A group of college students in Texas formed the Mexican Youth Organization, or MAYO. And Jose Angel Gutierrez founded La Raza Unida Party, or the RUP. Working class Chicano students in Los Angeles formed the Brown Berets, which was one of the most militant groups in the Chicano movement. So looking at Alianza, Reyes Lopez Tiarina focused on the enduring issue of land rights. Despite the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, Mexican Americans had lost thousands of acres over the years. Now we look at the Crusade for Justice. Once again, Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez promoted Mexican American nationalism. He provided legal aid and a theater for cultural awareness, a Spanish newspaper, and other community services. And he sponsored the National Chicano Liberation Youth Conference. And now we look at Mayo. Jose Angel Gutierrez wanted to achieve economic independence for Mexican Americans, gain local control over the education of Hispanic children, and a third political party. He organized school walkouts and mass demonstrations in Crystal City, Texas. And it was involved in forming La Raza Unida. Guterres formed the RUP, meaning the United People Party. They campaigned for bilingual education, improved public services, education for children of migrant workers, and an end to job discrimination. The RUP candidates were elected to offices in several Texas cities. The RUP expanded to Colorado and even other parts of the Southwest. Disagreements, though, among RUP leaders caused the party to fall apart in the late 1970s. And now we look at the Brown Berets, one of the most militant organizations in the Chicano movement. They began by protesting against police brutality or violence in East Los Angeles. They fought for bilingual education, better school conditions, Chicano studies, and more Chicano teachers. Supported efforts of Chicanos to regain their historic lands, the National Farm Workers campaigns, and protested the high number of Chicano deaths in Vietnam. They disbanded in 1972. And now we will look at the Boricua movement. This is the name by which many Puerto Ricans refer to themselves, and it expresses ethnic pride and support for political activism. Many Puerto Ricans migrated to the United States after World War II. Immigrants experienced social and economic discrimination. The movement's goals shifted from self-government for Puerto Rico to better conditions for all Puerto Ricans. The Young Lords was a militant Boricua organization, and Taller Boricua was a community arts organization. Cuban Americans. Many well-to-do Cubans fled Castro's communist government for the United States. The majority of immigrants were professionals and business people. Most Cuban Americans who organized for change were seeking changes for Cuba, such as the overthrow of Castro and of communism.